I was driving my Porsche down the quiet rural highway when the engine started sputtering, right before completely giving out. The car rolled to a stop in the last place I ever wanted to see again, Riverbend Grove, the small town I'd left behind 11 years ago when my family suddenly became rich. The only mechanic shop open was Brooks Auto Repair, and when Tyler Brooks, my childhood best friend, walked out, my heart nearly stopped. The boy I'd promised would always matter, the one whose number I blocked when I left. His first words were like ice. "Isabel Monroe, it's been a while." For 11 years, I'd been running from the guilt of what I'd done to him, but now, standing in his garage, there was nowhere left to hide. Before we go deeper, I want to ask, what's the name of your oldest friend? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love stories about broken promises, forgiveness, and second chances, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Now, let me take you back to that day. It started with a flashing check engine light and a sinking feeling in my chest. I pulled onto the shoulder of Highway 22, hands gripping the wheel as I read the sign ahead. Riverbend Grove, 2 miles. Of all the places for my car to break down, it had to be here. The town I grew up in, the town I swore I'd never return to, the town where I left behind the person who once meant everything to me. My phone barely had a single bar of service. I called roadside assistance, and the dispatcher told me help would take over 2 hours, but there was a local mechanic in Riverbend Grove who could take me in right away. Brooks Auto Repair. The name hit me like a punch. I knew that place. I'd spent half my childhood there, doing homework in the office while Tyler's dad worked on cars. We plan our futures and promise we'd never lose touch. That was before everything changed. Before my father's small roadside motel turned into a chain. Before success took us to Portland. Before I became Isabel Monroe, not Izzy from Riverbend Grove. I managed to nurse the Porsche the last 2 miles into town. Riverbend Grove looked almost frozen in time, the same diner, post office, and general store. The sign still said population, 3,200. When I'd left, it was 3,100. Not much had changed. Brooks Auto Repair sat at the edge of Main Street, repainted a cheerful blue but otherwise the same. I parked in front, my luxury car looking painfully out of place, and tried to steady my breathing. Maybe Tyler didn't work there anymore. Maybe someone else would fix the car, and I could leave without reopening old wounds. But I've never been that lucky. The office door opened, and out walked a man with broad shoulders and dark hair that fell just slightly into his eyes. He wore jeans and a grey t-shirt that said Brooks Auto. He looked older, stronger, but I'd have known him anywhere. Tyler Brooks, 27 now, but unmistakably the same boy I'd left behind. His expression shifted the second he recognized me, from friendly professionalism to something distant and unreadable. "Isabel Monroe," he said flatly, "it's been a while." I stepped out of the car, trying to steady my voice. "Hi Tyler, yeah, car trouble." He didn't smile, didn't move closer. "Pop the hood," he said. I did as he asked, watching him lean over the engine with practiced focus. He didn't look at me once. Every second stretched painfully long. Finally, he stood up and wiped his hands on a rag. "You've got a bad ignition coil. Maybe spark plugs too. I can fix it, but I'll need to order the part. With it being Sunday, it won't arrive until tomorrow morning. You'll have to stay overnight." My throat tightened. Right, is there a hotel? I stopped, realizing how absurd that sounded. My family owned the hotel. "The inn's still there," Tyler said, his tone sharp with quiet resentment, "though I'm sure it's changed a lot since you lived above it." The words strung. We had lived above it, my family's tiny apartment above the old motel office. It wasn't much, but it was home. Now it was gone, converted into luxury suites under the Monroe Hospitality brand. "Thank you," I said softly. "How much will it cost?" $450 for parts and labor. You can pick it up tomorrow afternoon." "That's fine." He nodded and began filling out the work order. "I'll need your contact info and a credit card on file," he said, still not looking at me. I handed it over, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. 11 years had passed, but standing there, it felt like I was 16 again, watching the best friend I'd betrayed slip further away with every word I didn't know how to say. I handed him my credit card and phone number, and he processed everything with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times. Professional, distant, treating me like any other customer. When he handed me the receipt, our fingers brushed for a moment. It was quick, barely a second, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or anger, then it was gone. "I'll call you when it's ready," he said, already turning back toward the garage. "Tyler, wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. "How have you been? It's been so long and I'm not here to catch up, Miss Monroe." Miss Monroe, formal, detached, the name of a stranger. Not Izzy, not the nickname he'd used all our lives. When he finally turned, his eyes were cold. "I'm here to fix your car so you can get back to wherever you came from, that's all." "I know I hurt you," I said quietly. "You didn't hurt me, you made a choice. People make choices all the time, I just moved on. Your car will be ready tomorrow, the inn's 2 blocks east." And with that, he walked back into the garage, leaving me standing there in the fading afternoon light, feeling like I'd just been hit by something I'd spent 11 years trying to outrun. The Riverbend Grove Inn was barely recognizable when I checked in. The place I'd grown up in, the modest roadside motel my father built with his own hands, was now a sleek boutique hotel with marble floors and designer fixtures. The small apartment where we once lived had been transformed into the Monroe Suite, available for $400 a night. I couldn't do it. I booked a standard room instead and sat on the bed, staring at my phone as memories flooded back like a tidal wave. Tyler Brooks had been my best friend from the moment we met at age 6. It was the first day of first grade. He was the quiet kid sitting alone at lunch, and I asked if I could sit with him. That simple question turned into a 10-year friendship that became the center of my childhood. We did everything together. Homework after school, bike rides down dirt roads, long summer days swimming in the river, winters building snow forts. Tyler's dad owned the auto shop. My dad ran the motel. Neither of us had much, but we had each other. He knew me better than anyone. He knew I was afraid of thunderstorms and would call me just to talk until they passed. He read every story I ever wrote, even the terrible ones. He knew I felt guilty about our family's money problems and that I'd do anything to make my parents proud. And I knew everything about him too. That he wanted to be an engineer. That he could take apart an engine and rebuild it blindfolded. That he hated his old truck but loved fixing it because it made him feel capable. We were inseparable. We dreamed of bigger lives but never imagined they'd pull us apart. Then everything changed. I was 16 when my father's small motel caught the attention of an investor named Richard Harris. He saw potential in my dad's work ethic and small-town hospitality. Within 6 months, Riverbend Grove Inn expanded into 5 properties. Within a year, there were 15. By the time I turned 17, Monroe Harris Hospitality owned 40 hotels across the Pacific Northwest. My father was suddenly worth over $200 million. We moved to Portland, to a glass-walled house in the West Hills that overlooked the city. I was enrolled at West Ridge Academy, a private school filled with the children of executives, politicians, and old money families. And for the first time in my life, I was terrified. These kids wore designer clothes, vacationed in Europe, and talked about ski trips and trust funds like it was normal. I didn't fit in, I didn't speak their language. And so I lied. I was ashamed of where I came from, the small town, the tiny motel, the friend whose dad was a mechanic. I wanted to belong so badly that I erased everything that made me who I was. The night before we moved, Tyler and I met one last time by the river, our spot. He cried, I cried. I promised him nothing would change. "You're my best friend, Tyler, you always will be. Money doesn't matter, we're forever." He believed me, and at that moment I meant every word. But the next day, surrounded by polished, confident students at my new school, everything I'd said started to feel like a weight I couldn't carry. When they asked where I was from, I lied. When they asked about my past, I rewrote it. I said I'd gone to a private school in Virginia, that my family had always been in hospitality. That night, Tyler called 3 times. I didn't answer. I texted that I was busy and would call him later. I never did. Over the next week, he called and texted constantly, first worried, then confused, then hurt. My mom eventually answered the phone and gently told him I needed space to adjust to my new life. I stood in the hallway and listened, saying nothing. Then I blocked his number. I deleted my social media and made new accounts under a slightly different name, with privacy settings that made me unsearchable. And just like that, Izzy from Riverbend Grove disappeared. I became Isabel Monroe from Portland, the girl with no past, the girl who fit in. Tyler tried for weeks to reach me, emails, messages through mutual friends, anything. Each one was like a knife in my chest. His words were always the same. Did I do something wrong? Please just tell me what happened. I never answered. Eventually, he stopped trying. And I spent the next 11 years pretending to be the person I'd invented. I went to Stanford, got my MBA, joined my father's company. On the outside, I had it all: success, relationships, a life that looked perfect. But I never forgot what I'd done. I never forgot the promise I broke. And I never forgave myself for being so ashamed, so desperate to belong, that I abandoned the one person who'd loved me before any of it mattered. Now sitting alone in my hotel room in Riverbend Grove, I finally realized the truth. I'd been running from my guilt for more than a decade, and now it had finally caught up with me. The next morning, I couldn't stay away. I told myself I just wanted to check on the car, but deep down, I knew that wasn't why I was going. When I walked into Brooks Auto Repair, Tyler was already there, working on my Porsche. He didn't look up, but I knew he'd heard me. The small bell above the door made sure of that. "How's it looking?" I asked softly. "Part came in," he said flatly. "Should be done by 2. His tone was clipped, professional, distant. His eyes never left the engine. "Tyler, please, can we talk?" "We are talking," he said. "I'm telling you about your car repair. That's what you're here for." "You know that's not what I mean." That's when he finally looked at me, and the coldness in his eyes made me take a step back. "What do you want me to say, Isabel?" he asked, voice rising with anger he'd kept buried for years. "That it's okay, that I understand, I don't. You were my best friend, my person, the one who knew everything about me, and then you just vanished." He took a shaky breath. "You promised me that night by the river, you said money wouldn't change anything. You said we were forever." Tears strung my eyes as he went on, the pain in his voice cutting deeper than I was ready for. "You blocked my number. Your mom told me not to call anymore. You deleted every trace of your old life like I never existed. Do you know what that did to me? I didn't just lose my best friend, I lost the only person I trusted completely. I spent months replaying every conversation, wondering what I'd done wrong, why you couldn't even say goodbye." "Tyler." "I'm not done." His voice cracked with emotion. "Then I realized something. I hadn't done anything wrong. You just decided I wasn't good enough for your new life. The mechanic's kid didn't fit in with the private school crowd or the mansion in Portland. I was an embarrassment, a reminder of everything you wanted to forget." Tears ran down my face. "That's not true." "Yes, it is," he said bitterly. "And you know what? Fine, people change, people move on, I get it, but you didn't have to lie to me. You didn't have to make promises you never meant to keep. You could have just said, 'Tyler, this is too hard, I need to start fresh.' I would have been hurt, but at least I would have understood. Instead, you let me believe we were still best friends, right up until the moment you erased me." I couldn't speak. Everything he said was true. Tyler's anger slowly faded into exhaustion. He looked down, his voice quiet now. "Why are you even here, Isabel? Your car will be ready in a few hours. Then you can go back to Portland and forget this place again. That's what you're good at, forgetting." "I never forgot," I said through my tears. "Not for a single day." He stared at me, his voice breaking slightly. "Then why? Why did you do it? Help me understand, because I've spent 11 years trying to figure it out." I sank onto the old bench in the waiting area, too weak to stand. For the first time in 11 years, I told someone the truth. "I was terrified," I said quietly. "When I got to Westridge, I was surrounded by kids who'd had everything their whole lives. They could tell I was different, they could smell the new money on me, and they were cruel about it. They mocked the way I dressed, the way I talked, everything about me. I was drowning, trying to fit in, desperate to belong." I wiped my eyes, though the tears wouldn't stop. "And every time you called, every time I saw your name on my phone, it reminded me of who I really was, the girl from a small-town motel apartment. The girl who wasn't rich or confident or special. You were the only one who knew that version of me, and I was ashamed of her. So you erased her, Tyler said quietly. I erased her, I whispered. I thought I could balance both worlds, the old and the new, but the longer I waited, the harder it got. Your calls started to sound so hurt, so confused, and I couldn't face telling you the truth, that I was choosing my new life over you, that I was too weak to be friends with someone who reminded me of where I came from. I was 16 and scared, and I threw away the most important friendship of my life. My voice broke, and I've regretted it every single day since. Every relationship I've had since then failed because no one really knows me. They know Isabel Monroe, not Izzy, the girl who grew up above a motel. You were the last person who knew the real me, and I threw that away because I was ashamed. Tyler stood in silence for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer but still guarded. I'm glad you feel guilty, he said. You should, but guilt doesn't undo what you did, Isabel. It doesn't erase those months I spent wondering why I wasn't enough. It doesn't bring back the person I trusted more than anyone in the world. I know, I whispered. I know I can't undo it, but losing you, that was the biggest mistake of my life. Not because of what I lost, but because of what I did to you. You deserved better than that. Yeah, he said simply, I did. He turned back to his work, leaving me sitting there in silence, surrounded by the weight of everything I'd destroyed. I left the garage and walked through Riverbend Grove, seeing it like I hadn't in years. The diner where we'd shared milkshakes, the park where we'd spent our summers, the river where we'd made promises I'd broken. When I reached the old motel, now a luxury boutique inn, I stood there staring at the building that used to be my home. The apartment above the office where my family had once lived was now the Monroe Suite. No trace of the girl who grew up there remained. I had gained everything, money, status, success, but lost the parts of myself that mattered most. The girl who valued people over possessions. The girl who had a best friend she loved more than her reputation. That afternoon I went back to the garage. Tyler had finished my car, perfectly repaired. He handed me the keys and the final invoice, $450, exactly as quoted. I handed him my credit card, then reached for my checkbook. Tyler, I want to pay you more. Don't, he said sharply. Don't insult me by trying to fix this with money. I did my job, you pay what I quoted, nothing more. I wasn't trying to. Yes, you were, he cut in. You think you can make this better with money, you can't, so just pay the bill and go. I paid the $450 and stood there, keys in hand, realizing this might be the last time I ever saw him. Tyler, I whispered, can I ask you something? He sighed but nodded. Now sitting in a hotel room in Riverbend Grove, I realized I'd been running from my guilt for over a decade, and running had finally caught up with me. The next morning I couldn't stay away. I walked to Brooks Auto Repair, pretending I just wanted to check on my car, but I knew I was lying to myself. Tyler was in the garage, working on my Porsche. He didn't look up when I entered, though I knew he'd heard the bell over the door. How's it looking? I asked. Part came in. Should be done by 2, he replied, voice clipped and professional, eyes never leaving his work. Tyler, please, can we talk? We are talking, I'm telling you about your car repair. That's why you're here, right? You know that's not what I mean. He finally looked up, and the cold anger in his eyes made me take a step back. What do you want me to say, Isabel? That it's okay? That I understand? I don't. You were my best friend, my person. You promised me that night by the river that money wouldn't change anything, that we were forever. Then you vanished. His voice grew louder, years of suppressed pain breaking free. You blocked my number. Your mom told me not to call anymore. You deleted every trace of your old life and acted like I never existed. Do you know what that did to me? I didn't just lose a friend. I lost the only person who truly knew me. Tears blurred my vision as he continued. I spent months trying to figure out what I did wrong, replaying every conversation, wondering how I messed up so badly that you couldn't even say goodbye. Then one day I realized I hadn't done anything wrong. You just decided I wasn't good enough for your new life. The mechanic's kid didn't fit with the private school crowd. I was an embarrassment, a reminder of the life you wanted to forget. That's not. Yes, it is, he snapped. You could have been honest, Isabel. You could have said, Tyler, this is too hard, I need to start fresh. I would have been hurt, but I would have understood. Instead, you lied. You made promises you never intended to keep. I was sobbing openly now. Everything he said was true. His anger deflated, replaced by exhaustion. Why are you even here? Your car will be ready soon. Then you can go back to Portland and forget about this place again. You're good at that, forgetting. I never forgot, I whispered, not for a single day. He stared at me, his voice breaking. Then why did you do it? Help me understand. I've spent 11 years trying to figure it out. I sank onto the bench, too weak to stand. For the first time in over a decade, I told someone the truth. I was terrified, Tyler. When I got to Westridge, I was surrounded by kids who had everything. They mocked the way I dressed, the way I talked, everything that made me different. Every time you called, it reminded me of who I really was. The girl from the small-town motel apartment, and I was ashamed of her. So you erased her, he said quietly. I did. I thought it was temporary, that I'd find a balance. But the longer I stayed silent, the harder it became. Your calls started sounding so hurt, so confused, and I couldn't bear to tell you that I was choosing my new life over you. I was 16, scared and desperate to fit in. I threw away the best friendship I ever had, and I've regretted it every day since. Tyler stood silently, processing. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer but still guarded. I'm glad you feel guilty, you should. But guilt doesn't undo what you did. It doesn't give me back the months I spent wondering why. I trusted you more than anyone, and you betrayed that. I know, I said through tears. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. Yeah, I did. He turned back to the car, ending the conversation. Later, I walked through Riverbend Grove, the diner where we shared milkshakes, the park where we spent summers, the library where we studied, the river where I'd broken my promise. I saw what I'd traded, money, status, success, for the parts of myself that mattered most. That afternoon, I returned to the garage. My car was ready. Tyler handed me the keys and invoice, $450, exactly as quoted. Tyler, I want to pay you more. Don't, he interrupted sharply. Don't insult me by throwing money at this. Pay the bill and go. I paid, knowing this was probably goodbye. Tyler, can I ask you something? He sighed but nodded. Did you end up okay after I left? He was quiet for a moment. I was a mess for about a year. Almost didn't go to community college because we'd planned to go together. Doing it without you felt wrong. But eventually I worked through it. Took over my dad's shop when he got sick. He's retired now. I'm engaged. Her name, Emma. She teaches at the elementary school. Wedding in 3 months. The news hit harder than I expected. Not jealousy, just a deep, aching sense of loss. He built a life while I'd been stuck in guilt. I'm happy for you, I said honestly. She's lucky. I'm the lucky one, he replied. She knows about you, the best friend who disappeared. She helped me work through that hurt. Good, I said softly. That's really good. I turned to leave but looked back once more. Tyler, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. You deserved honesty and loyalty, and I gave you neither. I was a coward, and you paid the price. He looked at me for a long time. His expression softened, not forgiveness but understanding. I know you're sorry, he said, but sorry doesn't change the past. It just means we both have to live with it and move forward. I know, thank you, and I hope you have a beautiful wedding. You deserve every bit of happiness. I walked to my car, tears blurring my vision. Just as I started the engine, Tyler appeared at my window. I rolled it down. Isabel, for what it's worth, I forgive you. My breath caught. What? I forgive you, not because it was okay or because I want to be friends again. Too much has changed, but because holding on to anger for 11 years has been exhausting. Your apology helps me see that you were just a scared kid making terrible choices, not a monster who didn't care. Tears streamed down my face again. Thank you, that means more than you know. Forgiveness doesn't mean friendship, he said gently. It just means I'm letting go of the hurt. We won't go back to what we were. This is closure, not reconciliation. I hope you understand that. I do. Drive safe. I drove away from Riverbend Grove with tears blurring my sight, pulling over twice to catch my breath. But this time they weren't tears of grief, they were tears of release. For 11 years I'd carried the weight of what I'd done, the guilt, the shame, the betrayal. Tyler's forgiveness didn't erase it, but it gave me something I desperately needed, permission to stop punishing myself. I started being more honest with others and with myself. I told people where I really came from. I stopped hiding Izzy, the girl from the motel, and started letting her coexist with Isabel Monroe. Some people didn't understand, some judged, but I learned something from losing Tyler. Hiding who you are to fit in isn't worth the cost. The people who matter will love you for all of you, mistakes, history, and all. I never went back to Riverbend Grove. Tyler got married, built his life, and became someone I used to know. I made peace with that, slowly, painfully, but truly. 3 months later, I received an email, a wedding photo of Tyler and Emma, smiling and happy, with a note. Found my forever friend, hope you find yours someday, T. I cried for an hour, tears of joy for him, forgiveness for me, and closure for both of us. I replied simply, you both look so happy. I'm glad you found her, wishing you a wonderful life together. He never wrote back. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt, but we can acknowledge the damage, learn from it, and do better moving forward. I broke a promise to my best friend. I can't undo that, but I can keep the promises I make now. I can choose honesty over fear and integrity over approval. Sometimes I still think of Tyler. I wonder if he's happy, if he ever thinks of me, but I don't reach out, that's not my place anymore. I just hope he knows. I finally learned what it means to keep a promise, even if it came 11 years too late. Outro. YouTube safe. What did you think of Isabel's choice to leave, and Tyler's decision to forgive but not reconcile? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about broken promises, shame, and redemption touched your heart, please hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next emotional story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.